My name is Tim Carter. I am one of the recruiters for the graduate school here at Marquette University. I've been here for almost 4 years now, 4 years this summer. And the programs that I recruit for are all of the STEM programs as well as the business programs. Yep, that's me. So what we're going to do here is really talk a little bit about just how to apply to graduate school. The presentation is that, 10, we call it the 10 tips to applying to graduate school. And to kind of just get you start thinking about graduate school, I will talk a little bit about Marquette too, but I just want to um, get everybody thinking about and on the right steps to preparing a successful application and just putting your best foot forward into applying for a master's degree or a PhD. So there's a little bit about me right there. Some fun facts about me. I have worked at some universities that have allowed me to travel all over the world and recruit for those schools. Northwestern University being one of those, and so I have had the opportunity to really travel to many of the European and Asian countries, and so that's kind of been something that's fun. I also like to sing. I don't know how many of you guys like to sing, but I sing in a barbershop quartet. Don't know if you know what a barbershop quartet is, but it's kind of like a cappella singing, four-part harmony, and have been somewhat successful in that. So I do enjoy doing something that's way different than recruiting and put a little bit of a different hat on, so to speak. So that's kind of it with me. Let's go on to the next slide. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about graduate school and maybe what the difference is. A lot of you, or all of you, should be an undergrad right now. And I just want to talk a little bit about the difference between the two schools, grad and undergrad, because there is going to be a big difference. Undergrad really focuses on learning information. There's going to be a lot of memorizing, a lot of just understanding broad concepts. You're probably used to that. There's going to be a lot of reading, some test taking. Grad school is not that. It's going to be a little bit different than that. You're really going to move away from the theory and more to the application. Um, you'll with undergrad, that, like I said, there's a broad understanding. When you get to grad school, there's going to be a deeper dive into particular subject matters that you're interested in. Okay. For example, I recruit for, let's say, electrical engineering at the undergrad level. A lot of broad terms and concepts, and you're going to get a good broad understanding of electrical engineering. But then once you get to grad school, you have to specialize in a certain area of electrical engineering, whether it be power systems or material systems. There's four different specializations, so it's a deeper dive, and so you have to be ready for that experience. There's a lot more reading, a lot more papers to write. There's going to be less tests, lots of hands-on learning, which you may be familiar with or are used to at Knox College. So it's a different experience, and you kind of have to be ready for that experience. Next slide, please. And so let's talk a little bit about why you would even want to go to grad school. Some of you have to. You have to be able to practice. You have to get licensure. And so you have to go and get that nursing degree or get that PhD in psychology to be able to go out and even practice what you want to do for a living. Some of you are thinking, you know what, I just want to broaden my skill sets and make myself a little bit more marketable when I look for a job. And certainly a master's degree will do that. I hear that all the time, especially in right now in the business field. It's difficult to get jobs in business right now. So people are getting their MBA right out of undergrad because it's going to make them a lot more marketable when they look for jobs. They're going to have skill sets that some students that are applying for jobs won't have with just an undergraduate degree. So you may be thinking about that. Some of you might be thinking about graduate school and maybe a little bit down the road. You want to get out. This was me. I graduated and I'm like, I just want to make some money for a while and get an apartment and just kind of live life and make some money. And that was kind of motivated me, but knowing that I had to go back and get a graduate degree at some point. Now, I waited for 6 years, which I don't know if I would recommend that, because it's really hard to get back into the swing of things when you are out for 6 years and trying to get back and do test taking again and studying and writing, 15 and 20-page papers again. I mean, it just was really a chore. So you may be waiting 6 years, but I don't know if that's the right move for a lot of you. Some are looking to increase their earning potential, and you certainly will do that with a graduate degree. You may not, once you get out into the workforce, may not command a higher salary right away with a master's degree. Some do, some don't, depending on the industry. But it will certainly propel you into leadership roles. It'll propel you into project management roles, which starts to increase your salary over time. And over your lifetime certainly will make for some of you, a significant amount of a salary increase over just with an undergraduate degree. So some different reasons why you would want to get a graduate degree. Next slide, please. Before I go on, I usually like to talk for maybe about 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes, and then open it up to questions. So if you have questions, certainly jot them down. We can talk about them towards the end of the presentation. But I want to talk about some things just really to get you thinking about how to put your best foot forward into putting an application, a successful application together. All right, next slide. So first thing is take a personal inventory. And this is what I had to do because I didn't want to go to grad school right away. And some of you may not. Do you enjoy being a student? First of all, if you don't enjoy being a student, then maybe graduate school is not the best place for you. You can certainly earn a great living, have a successful professional life without a graduate degree. So some of you may just be fine with an undergrad degree, and that's perfectly fine. A graduate school is not for everybody. So really take stock and if you enjoy school and if that's an environment you like to be a part of. Some of you maybe have student loans and you just want to start working and paying them off before you go back to school and incur any more debt. I'm hearing more and more students that want to take a gap year between undergrad and graduate school. Certainly might be an option for you as well, and you can use that gap year to really strengthen an application successfully. If you're going to go backpacking through Europe for a year, then maybe not going to strengthen your application so much. Yes, okay. But some of you, I had a neuroscience PhD student that I was talking to, and he says, you know what? I just don't have enough research experience or exposure in my undergrad, so I'm going to take a gap year, work for a professor, make a little bit of money, and get some experience doing some research, and then applying to my PhD in neuroscience. And he had a much stronger application with that gap year, getting some work experience under your belt. So whatever the reason, grad school may or may not be the right move for you right away, or maybe down the road a little bit. Okay, next screen or next slide. Yeah. All right, finding the right school. Now you're probably going to look at rankings, everybody, and I think rankings are certainly important thing to look at. When you look at schools that have high rankings, what that tells you is they're going to have strong reputation in the field, in the industry. When you go out for job interviews, you're not going to have to explain your degree. People are going to know what that degree is, what you've learned, and how it can benefit that company or that clinic or whatever wherever you might be working. But I wouldn't get too hung up on the rankings. The last thing I would hate for you to do is join a school where, you know what, they're in the top 10 in psychology. I'm going to go there just because of that. And then you have a miserable experience for 5 years because it's not the environment that you will be successful in. I'll give you an example. I have worked for University of Chicago and I've worked for Northwestern University, two universities that have very different cultures. The size is very similar. The average student age is everything is very similar, but University of Chicago bends a little bit more towards leadership, and they like to see lots and lots of leadership. And when you get into that school, you better be ready to lead some teams and lead some clubs and just do lots of leadership. Northwestern, kind of opposite of that. They're all about teams and doing things in teams and working well in teams and leading teams. And so that is an environment that where somebody who likes to work in that environment will be very successful successful in. And so you really want to look at the culture and kind of set yourself up for success, and not be too hung up on the ranking of a school. Other factors that are involved too. You're going to look at tuition and whether or not you get a good bang for the buck at a particular school, whether or not you can afford to go to that school. We'll talk a little bit about funding down the slides a little bit. Cost of living. Um, I had somebody who lives in San Francisco wanting to know what the cost of living is like in Milwaukee, and I'm like, it's nothing like living in San Francisco. So when you get an offer and they offer you a stipend, which is helps you with living expenses, so you'll get not only tuition paid for, but also a stipend to help with your living expenses. If you get a stipend of, let's say, $25,000 and you're living in San Francisco, that's not a lot in a year to live off of 25,000. 25,000 in Milwaukee is a lot because the rent is less, groceries are less, everything, gas prices are less. And so you really want to also look at cost of living and kind of weigh those benefits and whether or not that is something that you feel is an environment that you can be successful in living at for 2, 5, even 6 years. So lots of things to think about. And so just kind of gives you some things that you can weigh as important to you or as not as important to you. Okay, next slide, please. So the application process, it's going to be different. And if you applied to undergrad to multiple schools, you know this, it's going to be different from school to school. And so you're going to want to have a good handle of what everything is required of those schools. What are the minimum GPAs required? What are the standardized tests and those minimum scores? How many letters of recommendation? Is an interview required? All of this stuff is very, very important. And one thing I always recommend is really start a spreadsheet. And maybe you did this with undergrad as well. Start a spreadsheet, and down the column is going to be all the schools that you're looking at, and across the top is going to be all the requirements, all the things you want to make sure that you understand, and then start filling in that spreadsheet as you get that information. I'll give you an example with Marquette. Our application deadline is different than our financial aid deadline. And a lot of the application deadlines are after the financial aid deadline. So if you say submit your application for the computer science PhD, when that deadline is, you've missed the deadline for financial aid, which is February 15th as opposed to March 1st. So really pay attention to those. If you don't get your stuff in by before that February 15th financial aid deadline, even though the application deadline is later, you're going to miss out on lots of funding opportunities. So make sure you pay close attention to what all those different deadlines are and you understand when you need to get those applications in. So that is very important. Some programs do a common application. If you're going to apply to, let's say, speech language pathology or dentistry or even nursing at the graduate level, they all have common applications, maybe similar to undergrad, which means that when you complete an application through, let's say, Nursing Cast, you're going to list all the schools that you want Nursing Cast to send that application to. And so you're going to submit all of your information to Nursing Cast, and then we as Marquette or any other school will have access to to seeing your application materials. Some don't. So you're going to have to know what schools you have to apply directly to and what schools you can have apply it to a common application to. So lots, again, things to think about, and hope I'm not scaring too many people. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a good time. I don't know if you're a senior, junior, sophomore. It's never too early or late to start looking at graduate school. But now's the time when you want to start connecting with your mentors that you have at Knox College. Many of them, if not all of them, have gone to graduate school. So talk to them about their experiences, their successes, their failures, what they would have done differently if they would do it over again. They're going to be a great, great resource for you. And make sure you keep in touch with them for a few years, at least a few years out of undergrad, because some of them may be they may be providing a letter of recommendation for you. So make sure you keep in contact with them. and think about maybe 3 or 4 people that you that really impacted your experience, or that were able to see you in a lab, or to see you in a group discussion, or see you in a classroom, see you in a community activity, or a group that you were involved in school. And just ask about their experiences of going to graduate school. That's going to be really important. Will be an eye opener for you. Okay, next slide, please. Build a professional resume. I'm sure that Kendra can give you some insights into how to build one, where to go to be successful in building a professional resume. All universities will have career resources for you to be able to do this successfully. So make sure you reach out to them and utilize their resources. It's going to be very important for you to put together a strong resume, depending on where you are applying. When you reach out to these schools, and we'll be talking about this in a few minutes, you're going to know what's important to these schools, and you're going to want to make sure that that resume focuses on some of these areas that are important to these schools. Remember, I said Northwestern is big into teams, so you want to make sure that you put some team activities that you were involved in your resume. University of Chicago likes leadership roles. So you're going to maybe have a different resume that you want to submit for a place like University of Chicago, or a place like Harvard, for example, heavy leadership, and add that kind of flavor into your resume. Some things that you want to take out of a resume. I know you're very proud of what you did in high school, and you may think that is very important, but once you get into graduate school, we don't want to know what you've done in high school any longer. So take all of that stuff out of there. If you were a valedictorian, I'm proud of you. That's great. We don't need to know that when you apply to graduate school. So take those types of things out of the resume, and make sure you proofread. Have somebody else look at the resume too. You'd be surprised at maybe some formatting errors that you didn't catch, or some misspellings that you need to fix. And again, career services is a great resource for you to be able to put together some successful resumes. And like I said, have a couple, one that focuses on one area of your life, and another one maybe that focuses on another area of your life. Okay, next slide, please. When you apply to grad school as an undergrad, every year you're going to be writing some essays, and that's a big part of the application to graduate school. At Marquette, we have just one question. Give us a statement of purpose. Take as long or as little as you want, and just tell us your story. Other schools might say, here's 3 questions. Answer these 3 questions. And you want to make sure that you answer those 3 questions. Be specific, be truthful, and proofread. Okay. A statement of purpose is really simple. You just want to tell us, where your passion came from. For example, if you want to apply to psychology programs, where did that passion for psychology come from? And talk about some successes that you've had at the undergraduate level at Knox College. Maybe some groups or clubs that you were involved in, some internships that you were involved in, and kind of back up that passion that you had. Show some successes in the field that you've had in psychology. You're going to want to talk about why graduate school. Why do you think that you need this graduate degree to be successful in where you want to go? Talk about your goals, kind of in line with why graduate school. Why do you need this graduate degree to be successful in your profession? As I mentioned, some of you have to do it because for licensure reasons. Some of you don't have to do a graduate degree, but you want to, and tell us why you want to do that. And also talk about the school a little bit. Talk about Marquette, for example. Tell us why you think Marquette is a good school that you want to visit, um, uh, or that you want to go to school. If you talk about, I want to go to school that has lots of leadership and lots of opportunities for me to lead things, and you're applying to Northwestern, that's not going to be as a successful application as if you talk a lot about, well, I want to go to Northwestern because they're all about teams. I'm successful in that environment. That's where I thrive. That's where I will excel. And I think I'm be an impact player at a place like Northwestern that's involved in lots of team activities. And so you really want to add that flavor into statement of purpose or into your essay questions. Make sure that you proofread. I read a statement of purpose this year that said, you know what, I really want to go to Notre Dame. It's a school that I love, and I would be successful there. Well, hello, you've applied to Marquette. And so right away, there's a knock against you. That's going to be a hard hurdle to overcome. So proofread all of your essays. If you feel comfortable, have your roommate or have a mentor proofread. Have career services proofread your essays to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward and not making really kind of those silly errors that you kind of overlook sometimes. Okay, next slide, please. Letters of recommendation are so strong. You really need to focus on really some good letters of recommendation. Some things to think about. If you're applying right out of undergrad, you're going to want to have professors write letters of recommendation for you. Letters of recommendation are important for a couple of reasons. Number one is we want to know that you are ready for study at the next level, at the graduate level, at the master's or PhD level. And who better than professors who have been through it and who have also watched you grow through your undergrad experience. And they can tell us, yep, this person that the Roman is ready for the next level, and here are the reasons why I think he is ready for a PhD at Marquette University. So make sure you talk to your recommenders. Don't be afraid to say, "Hey, I want you to write about this or write about that." If it's three professors that are writing letters of recommendation and they all say the same thing, it's great if they're all positive. But if you have one professor that's talking about, watching you in the lab or in a clinic, and they can bring out those experiences that you've had in that environment, and then have another professor talk about a club that you were a leadership, had a leadership role in, and how you've been able to be successful leading a club or leading an organization. Maybe a professor that's sort of watched you lead a group project or a classroom discussion or something like that. So don't be afraid to tell professors what to write about so you can bring in different perspectives into that graduate application. That can really be a strong application that you're putting together if you can do that. Um, the longer you are out of undergrad, maybe the less you can rely on those professors. And the reason I say that is, let's say for me, for example, I was out of school for 6 years before I went back to graduate school. I didn't keep in touch with very many professors after 6 years. And so I had one that I felt I could trust in writing some good things. I was more involved in my profession, so I had a supervisor, and I've had a colleague of mine write those other letters of recommendation. So I kind of the rule of thumb is the longer you're out of graduate school, the more you can start leaning towards some professional letters of recommendation, and I think that is perfectly fine. Now, having said that, I would ask that all of you, as you look at your schools, talk to the admissions office. They are there to help you put together successful applications to their school. They want you to be successful and they want you to come to that university. We want you to come to Marquette. So we're going to tell you if you've been out of school for 6 years, it's perfectly fine if you give all three letters from your work experience. That's perfectly fine. Other schools may not think that. They might still want to see a professor's letter of recommendation. So reach out to those universities so that you are, again, putting your best foot forward and you're giving the faculty who are going to be reviewing your application what they want to see to make the best decision and hopefully an admit decision to those universities. Don't be afraid to send reminders to the recommenders when you're applying to school. Um, I will say that 90% of the time, everything is in before the application deadline except for one letter of recommendation or two letters of recommendation. And sometimes recommenders, professors, or people from work just forget they have a busy life. And so don't be afraid to send them reminders maybe a couple of weeks before the deadline. Just say, hey, don't forget. I see that you haven't submitted your letter of recommendation yet. The deadline's coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm sure that they would appreciate a reminder. because they may have just forgotten about that. So don't be afraid to knock on their doors, even as a deadline gets close, to say, hey, I see that you haven't submitted a letter yet. When you apply to schools, everything is so automated now. You can jump online and see when people submit stuff and how they submitted it. And I mean, you can see a lot of stuff online, so you'll know who's kind of dragging their feet in the application process. Hopefully, it's not you that's dragging your feet, but it's most likely going to be a recommender who's going to be writing that letter kind of at the last minute. Okay, next slide, please. Ah, yes, the required tests. Everybody liked to take that SAT or the ACT when they got into undergrad. Well, for some programs, you're going to have to do that again. There's the GRE, the GMAT, the LSAT, the MCAT. Oh, there's all sorts of standardized tests. And you're going to have to prepare to study for those. A couple things that I would recommend is take them early. Don't wait until 2 or 3, 4 years after you graduate, and then take a standardized test. If you take them now, when you, like, shortly after you're a senior, or even in your senior year, you're still kind of in that study mode of taking tests, and it really makes a standardized test that much easier to take. When I had to take mine 6 years out of undergrad, it was really hard for me to take those practice tests and kind of prepare to be successful in getting that score that I need. Um, Tests are good for 5 years. And so if you know you're going to be going to graduate school in 1, 2, 3 years after undergrad, just go ahead and take it when you're a senior. Just take it now, and get it out of the way. Get that score that you need. And that also gives you opportunity, if you don't get the score that you like, to maybe take it again and get the score that you like. There's lots of practice tests out there, and there's going to be people saying, "Hey, pay me $100, and I'll give you some tests to practice on." There's a lot of free practice tests out there, so don't be thinking you have to open your wallet to take any standardized test practice. There's a lots and lots of free tests you can take out there to prepare you for taking these tests. Now, having said that, more and more schools are even getting away from having you taking a test that's mandatory. Some say if you have a GPA that's at a certain level, you don't have to take a test. For example, at Marquette, in the business school, if you have a GPA that's above a 3.25, you don't have to take any tests. So make sure you understand, again, when you are applying to all these different schools, whether or not you have to take a test at all. Our chemistry program and our biology program 2 years ago just eliminated the GRE test altogether. They're like, you know what? We don't even need that in the decision-making process at all. So some schools may still require tests, some may not. So do your research. But again, take them soon. Take them when you're a senior or shortly thereafter. So that way things are still fresh in your mind. All right. I see some wide-eyed eyes down there. Roman, are you okay? You're doing okay? Your eyes are getting awful big, so I'm hoping I'm not scaring you too much. I'm just kidding you. Okay, next slide, please. All right, transcripts. You guys all know that you need to send transcripts to graduate school. A couple things to think about. Um, Most schools nowadays will allow you to upload unofficial transcripts to their application to get you a decision. So don't think you have to pay all this money to get official transcripts sent to all your schools. I tell you right now, probably 90% of the schools will make decisions on unofficial transcripts. So start accumulating those transcripts now, keep them in your possession, and just save a PDF and upload that to your applications as you apply to graduate school. Now, if you get admitted and you select the school that you want to go to, then they're going to want an official transcript. And an official transcript, even though it might say official on the one that you have, needs to go from school to school. So if it passes through you and then to the second school, it's not considered official anymore. And so most schools will do them electronically, and you'll have to just jump online and say, "Hey, Knox College, please send official transcript to Marquette University." They'll just send to us electronically, and as long as it's going from school to school, it's considered official. But don't be afraid to use unofficial transcripts. And a lot of you, a common question I get is that, do I have to wait until I graduate before I submit a transcript to apply to that school? The answer is no. For example, if our deadline, let's say for biological sciences, is December 1st of your senior year, so you haven't graduated yet, so you're going to submit a transcript of freshman through junior, and that's perfectly fine. And we'll base our decision on those 3 years that you went to Knox College when we make our decision. And then when you graduate from Knox, then we're going to want to know that you've graduated, and you're going to send us an official score if you choose to come to Marquette. So you don't have to wait until you graduate. Submit the transcript with as many completed semesters courses as you can, and that's perfectly fine. All right, next slide, please. What is coming up? Campus visits. This is the fun part. This is what you want to do is visit campuses and kind of understand what the culture is like, and just to see if you look at the students, talk to students, sit in on a class and say, you know what, I really feel like I can study with these students. I really feel like I can communicate, or I kind of get how the professors teach at this university. I think that is critical. Visiting schools can be critical. Some people do it on the front end and they say, you know what, I'm applying to 3 schools, I'm going to visit them. And on the front end when I'm applying, or maybe even 5 schools, and that kind of weeds out, you know what, I just like 3 now after I visited 5 schools, and you're going to apply to those 3. Some wait, some will apply to 5 or 6 schools, and then they will visit to those that they got admitted to, which is also a good strategy. And visit those schools you're admitted to, and again, talk to the students, sit in on a class. There's all sorts of ways to kind of understand how that school feels, and how you can interact with them and they interact with you. Now, having said that, if you're applying to a PhD program, and even some master's degrees will actually fly you to their schools, or pay for your transportation expenses and put you up in a hotel for the night or two while you visit their school. So make sure you understand that. Talk to the admissions staff when you're looking at these schools and saying, hey, if I get admitted, is there an interview process? Are you going to bring me to campus for that interview? And if they say, yep, we're going to pay your expenses, we're going to put you up for a night, well, hey, then you don't have to worry about opening your wallet to visit that school. So make sure you understand what the process is for the school, so that way you know if you need to actually, put something on a credit card to visit that school or not. So reach out to those institutions. All right, how about the next slide? All right, so enough about the 10 tips. That was the 10 tips. Pretty painless? I know I gave you a lot of things to think about, so hopefully it was good information for you. But I want to talk a little bit about Marquette. So if we can go to the next slide, and just to give you an example, now Knox College is a fairly small school. I would say it's a small school. Marquette is considered a mid-sized school, so we have it's closer to 12,000 students right now. About 3,200 are graduate students, so it's a mid-sized school. It's going to be, fairly a little bit larger than Knox College, but it's not going to be like an Ohio State University. Ohio State University has about 65,000 students. It's kind of like a small city, so there are small, medium-sized, and large institutions. And so really make sure you understand what it means and the resources that are provided or not provided for you when you go to these different institutions. Marquette is a Catholic institution, so there's going to be a little bit of an emphasis on theology. We have a strong theology program. We have 35 priests that are on campus. Some of them teach classes. Some of them are in administration. Some of them are heavily involved in community activities that you might be involved in. And so you're going to see kind of that presence on campus. Marquette is part of the Jesuit community, so there is a strong emphasis on doing community work. And when you come to Marquette, you're going to be getting involved in community work. Whether or not it's through your major or through the clubs, you're going to see there's a strong emphasis in getting involved in the community. So again, if you don't visit us, you might not know that. And so visit the community, visit those schools. The schools that you're looking at. Kendra, I want to see if you can click on that arrow, if we can see a little bit, if we can, hey, maybe this will work. Yeah, I didn't think so. It's probably not going to show sound, is it? Well, it's only a minute long, so we'll look through this.
Was the sound working?
No, it's not working.
Okay. Let me try moving it over to the.
No, that's
You're
fine,
good.
Kendra.
Okay.
I'm good. Yeah, it's only a minute long, but it
Okay.
gave you a kind of a snapshot of the different buildings on campus and different clubs that you can get involved in. Um, at
Do you want me
graduate school,
to
I'm
read it
sorry?
back?
Nope, you're
Okay.
good.
Sorry.
Go. Yep, either one is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and so Marquette is involved in the community a lot. There's a lot of opportunities to work with students on many, many different levels. These are the four pillars that Marquette University was founded on: service, leadership, excellence, and faith. And when you come to Marquette, you're going to see all four of these things as part of your experience when you come to a place like Marquette. It's a great school. Just a personal experience. I went to school at NIU, Northern Illinois University, if you know where NIU is in DeKalb. Um, and that's a big school. There's about maybe 24,000 students. And when I came to Marquette, and this was as a staff member, and I came for my job interview. I remember closing my door and walking out into the sidewalk. The first person that I came up with said, "Good morning." I'm like, "What?" I said good morning back, but I was surprised because in DeKalb the school is just too big. I mean, there's 24,000 plus another 3,000 staff and faculty. I mean, there's 30,000 people. You just don't say good morning a lot, if at all. And I encountered that on that first day. So many people saying good morning to me, and it was just amazing. So it's a small, intimate school where you really get to know the fellow students. Certainly in your major. I found it a very welcoming school, and so you wouldn't know that if you didn't visit the school and see that for yourself. Okay, let's see. I think this might be all. What is one more slide? Oh, we do have one more slide. Oh, and visit Milwaukee. So everybody knows where Milwaukee is. Maybe you have all heard of Milwaukee, certainly. Milwaukee is a town of about 600,000 people. There's about 1.5 million people in the metropolitan area in southeastern Wisconsin. We're about 90 miles north of Chicago and about 90 miles south of Green Bay. The Green Bay Packers are big in Wisconsin. So it's a metropolitan area, and we are located in downtown. So this is an urban school. So it's going to be very different probably than a Knox College or even a school like NIU that I went to. It's an urban environment, and when people come here, they're like, "Wow!" You either like it or don't like it, and hopefully everybody that comes will like it. But urban schools are not for everybody, and it's important to visit again so you understand that. Lots of things to do in Milwaukee. It's your typical big city. Lots of good food, lots of good festivals, lots of good parks. On my bucket list to do, it was actually this last summer, was to take sailboat lessons. We couldn't do that last summer because of the pandemic, but hopefully this summer or next summer I can check that off on my bucket list that I've actually learned how to sail. And has anybody been to Summerfest in Milwaukee? It's the largest music festival in the world. It is fantastic. It's a week long of nothing but music. It starts at like 8 in the morning and goes to like midnight for 7 straight days. Well, actually over 2 weekends. So it's ends up being about 8 or 9 days. And it's a fantastic experience. So if you haven't done Summerfest, that's something that you may want to come up experience. All kinds of music. It really is quite amazing. But anyway, that's a little bit of Milwaukee. I have no idea what the time is, but I'm going to stop talking now. I think I've talked probably enough. And the next slide is just opening it up to any questions that you might have. So we can probably maybe eliminate this the PowerPoint altogether and just let me see some faces for a while. So anyway, thank you. Oh, good, 4:42. Look at that, 42 minutes I spoke. So that's pretty good. So let's open it up to questions and see what's on your mind. And maybe Kendra or I could answer any of the questions that you have just about graduate school in general. We have Jade, we have Aaron, we have Lizzie, and we have Roman. So go ahead and unmute yourself and talk to us for a while.
I actually also have a student who had contacted me about, the recording session, and they had sent me a couple questions they wanted me to ask too. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll start it out if y'all still need to. But they're an international student that graduated last year, and they had a couple questions of. I also recommended them to reach out to you as well, and I'll share your PowerPoint. But they wanted to know kind of like what the specifics on grad school for international students are from applying from the outside of the U.S. Like the financial support. Is there any that they can apply for? And a couple other ones, but I won't ask them all at once.
Yeah. Well, funding is a critical piece of going to graduate school, and there's so many different ways to get funded. First of all, the FAFSA is not going to help you really as much at the graduate level. All those grants that you may have been receiving, or the Pell, or the ISAC, the ISAC grant, all those different grants are only for the undergraduates. So really, you're going to have to let go of the FAFSA and start looking at each individual school. We have scholarships that are based on merit. We have scholarships that are based on just an overall application, so merit and professional experiences that you're bringing to the table. We have assistantships. Assistantships are in so many different forms. We have graduate assistantships, teaching assistantships, and research assistantships. And they all provide partial or full funding when you go to any school. And that's another way to get funding. And so reach out to those schools. Now in Marquette, we don't distinguish between international or U.S. citizens when it comes to funding. So everybody has the same opportunities for funding. Whether you're internet, we don't have any scholarships specifically for international or specifically for U.S. citizens. Everybody is kind of grouped together and everybody has an equal chance. Now, some other schools may not work that way. They might have some international specific scholarships or assistantships. So certainly do your research and understand that. The way you apply for our internships is actually 2 questions on your admissions application. As long as you answer yes to those 2 questions, that I want scholarships, and I want to be eligible or avail any scholarship, and I want any assistantship. As long as you answer those 2 questions, we're going to automatically look at you for anything that's available. Other schools may not be that way. You might have to apply to specific scholarships, and so make sure you understand that. The way assistantships work, especially if you're going to be a PhD student, this is going to be important. I think if you're looking at a PhD, I would, if you should always be getting an assistantship plus a stipend if you're going into a PhD program. If they're not offering you that, then I think you need to be looking at other schools. And that's why you kind of throw a wide web and apply to several different schools, because we have at Marquette lots of assistantships for PhD students that give you full funding, so a full tuition scholarship, and then they also provide a stipend. So to help with your living expenses when you move up here for those 5 years. Now, we also have some for master's degree students. So don't think that you're a master's and you can't get an assistantship. We have those opportunities here too. Some schools do not. Some schools only do assistantships for PhD students. Some do them for both. So there's, again, look at all the different schools. But at Marquette, we treat everybody the same. We look at all international and domestic students for any aid that you're eligible for.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions?
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One is, I'm not quite sure how to word this, but are you looking at semester or term GPAs during COVID differently than a regular semester or term? And
We
then
are
my
going.
second question is, my second question was just going to be, what kind of psychology programs for masters do you have?
Oh my gosh, we have 5 different master's psychology programs that cover the spectrum. and we have 3 PhD programs. Psychology is a strong interest at Marquette. We have a national ranking in psychology. So really anything that you want to do, whether any sort of work that you want to do in psychology, you'd be able to do that and study that at Marquette. Having said that, it is also competitive, and so you want to make sure you're talking with us and you're talking with um, mentors and with maybe even professors here to put together a successful application to the program, knowing that they are successful. If you're applying to master's or PhD, chances are there's going to be an interview that's going to be required too. So understand and be prepared for an interview if you come to Marquette. As far as GPA is concerned, we are going to look at your overall GPA, even including the COVID year. As long as there's some consistency throughout the entire time that you're going to school at Knox College, then there's no reason, for concern. If there are some grades that you want to explain, or if you've gotten all A's and B's in your freshman and sophomore years, in the COVID year, you've just had a lot of distractions. So all of a sudden there's some B's. You didn't like the online learning, just explain yourself. I think that is going to be very important. And as long as things make sense, I think you'll be just fine. But we're gonna look at everything. We're gonna look at the overall picture initially, and then if we see some areas that maybe where there's some confusion, then we're going to start drawing some conclusions. So don't be afraid to be open and honest in your application when you write your essays and say, hey, you know what? The faculty is going to see it, so you might as well just explain it as well. And we certainly understand this has been a very, very atypical year, and some people, I don't know how students have been able to get through the year. I'll be honest with you, it has been challenging. Most of the classes have been online, and online learning, it can be very, very difficult, especially if the professors did not put together a very successful online sort of learning experience. That can add to some frustrations as well. And so certainly just explain. I hope that helps.
It does, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Anything else that's on people's minds? Nope. Any other, you had maybe another question from that international student, Kendra?
I do. Another one that they asked is how crucial is the length of work experience to the application? And will it be considered negative to apply for a program with multiple research ideas as opposed to like having one focus? I don't know if the questions that you'd be able to answer, or if those are more like, specific to when they apply kind of, departments.
Yeah, it's really program. It's really depends program by program.
Yeah.
As far as as far as what they look for. I'll give you an example. If you're applying to, let's say, a degree, whether it's an MBA, a master's degree, or a PhD in the College of Business, they want at least 2 years of work experience. And so you can't even apply until you get 2 years of work experience. So it's going to be very different. If you're looking at a PhD, let's say a PhD in neuroscience, it is they don't care less about work experience. They want to see some research and laboratory experience. And so if you've gotten that experience in undergrad, if you've been able to work side by side with a professor on some research that he or she is doing in their lab, that's what they like to see, and that's going to be really important. And they don't care if you have a lot of different research interests. They really don't care. Now, having said that, if you're looking at the College of Engineering, they want to see a little bit more focus. They want to know that you want a certain specialization, and this is what you want to accomplish when you come to Marquette and do research in that specialization. Very different than the neuroscience PhD. So again, it's very much program specific. Probably at any college, it's going to vary by program.
That makes complete sense. Yeah. Thank you. I'll let her know that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why it's important. Yeah, it's important to do your research. Choose those 5 or 6 schools that you're going to be looking at, and reach out. And don't be afraid to talk to us admissions reps. We're going to set you up for success. We're going to tell you how to put together a successful application at our institution. And if you don't reach out, you might be putting together an application that just is not what we're looking for. For example, if you don't know that we require 2 years of work experience for anything in the College of Business, you could be applying with just 1 year, automatic going to be denied. And if you only would have reached out first, you could have saved some time and effort in that application process.